Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on how to build rapport and connect with your audience. I think one of the most important things when we're speaking or facilitating is our ability to have that connection with our audience. I've seen some very eloquent, very polished speakers, very knowledgeable speakers present and just not take the time to understand their audience or connect with their audience, and they've fallen a bit short of the mark. So this webinar is about how can you make that connection, build the rapport more effectively with your audience. You've got my website, you know how to contact me via email, and you know I do Facebook tips on public speaking. So Peter Dew's my name, and my passion is helping people with their public speaking, with their presentation skills, and overcoming their fear. A couple of people on the webinar I haven't seen before, so I'll quickly run through this. Ask questions at any time. Just type in the dialog box. Take notes. If I go too quickly and you want to contact me after, feel free to send me an email. But most importantly is the application. So I want you to think about the content. Is there anything you could do in planning an upcoming presentation or workshop? Anything you could do from what I'm teaching you today, or anything you could have done from a previous workshop? It's about the implementation of the knowledge rather than just learning it and saying that's very nice and then you don't do anything. So the best way to get value out of the webinars is to look for one or two things that will work for you tomorrow, next week, that'll make you more effective, and in this case, connect at a stronger level with your audience. This is my little formula to help you maximize your presentation impact. Last week, I spoke about credibility. Your content is really important, as is your confidence. Today is about your connection. If any one of these falls a little bit short, your presentation impact will also suffer. So you need all of them. Today is about your connection. So this is the agenda. Very quickly, why build rapport? Why take the time to connect? The importance of trust and how to build trust. Preparation is probably the key tool in building your connection, and some other tools that will help you be more engaging and more in rapport, a greater connection with your audience, and the concept of keeping the connection going, and a couple of do nots, which I've called rapport busters, those things that will break the connection. So I'm going to start with a few quotes in terms of why building rapport. This is a marketing quote. I cannot find the source of it, but it's a well-known marketing quote. People buy from people they know, like, and trust. When we're speaking, when we're running a workshop, we're selling information, we're selling knowledge, we're often selling a better way for our clients, for our audience, whether they're people with intellectual disabilities, whether they're in an aged care facility and they just need some respite or some extra funding, and you've got that knowledge, people are going to buy that information from you when you've connected with them. So you are selling information, you are selling knowledge. I've changed this quote for my own purposes. People listen and learn from people they know, like, and trust. That's one of the reasons we build that connection, that trust, that rapport. And Harvard Business Review has this wonderful quote: focus on connection, not perfection. And I use this to help people deal with their fear as well. But what if I make a mistake? What if I put my foot in my mouth? What if I forget what I'm saying? What if I stutter, as in my case? If you're in connection, if you're in rapport, your audience will get your message. If you deliver a perfect message, as I alluded to earlier on, word perfect, not one mistake. In fact, you have a beautiful radio voice, but you have no connection with the audience, you won't have the same impact. So what this connection helps you do is it helps you to connect with the audience and build that trust. It creates an environment where people will take on your message. They will contemplate what you're saying, especially if you're doing change management. If you want to get people to adopt a different way of thinking. You need that connection and that trust. Why should I stop doing what I've done the same way and move to your way of thinking? I guess for a lot of people within the disability field, the National Disability Insurance Scheme is going to put money with the families and the carers, whereas they've relied on institutions and agencies, and that can be a little bit scary. Why should they change? Why should they trust you? You need some credibility, and we spoke about credibility last week and the real importance of credibility. If you can build the trust, it gives you credibility, and with that credibility, it gives more of a license to present, gives you reliability, and it gives you the permission or the license to teach or sell information. One of the mistakes that people do is they stand up on stage and they go straight into the content. So I'm here today to tell you 5 ways so that you can retire rich and never have to worry about money again. A 5 simple step process. But hang on a minute, who are you? Why should we buy this message off you? Why should we trust you? So one of the mistakes is going straight into content before building the connection. So this is the schema, this is the reason, along with the Harvard Business quote, as to why we take the time to connect and get in rapport with our audience. Some tips to build trust. Know what you're talking about. Don't make stuff up. Be knowledgeable in your area. And know where to find out answers. Sometimes you get really good questions that you haven't had before, and it's not wrong to not know the answer to everything. And my reply is that I have a colleague, I have a friend who works in that area specifically. Let me find out his view and I will get back to you. But know what you're talking about and know what you're not talking about. And this is not about faking it in terms of your content. That's where you will lose trust. And of course, most of you have got your iPhone or your iPad or your Android device. And if I quote some statistics or make something up and you just check it out, then I may lose trust if I make things up. I was at a conference in Canberra recently where a senator who was reviewing speech pathology services and the Speakeasy Association people who stutter, it was their conference. This senator was invited to speak and spoke at the conference. And they started describing all the symptoms of stuttering. We don't need to be told what the symptoms of stuttering are. So they spent all this time telling us what we already knew before they moved into what was the findings of the Senate committee. Do what you say, walk the talk. This is the time management guru who starts late. This is the professional public speaking like myself who doesn't finish on time in a workshop or doesn't start on time. This is the financial planner who tells you don't waste money on depreciating assets such as cars, who then drives the latest Mercedes-Benz or BMW themselves, which is obviously against what a good financial advisor would say, or else they're making too much money. Have some credentials and experience. Reveal your vulnerability. One of the things that people find really amazing with me, and I guess I'm lucky and I'm unique, is when I tell people that I stutter. And I let them know fairly early on, and I let them know of my time when I was unable to speak. And now I do public speaking for my living. This helps me connect and build trust. So Peter really does know what it's like to be afraid of public speaking. And share your struggle and your success. And if you've come through a dark time, a difficult time, if you've been able to lose weight, if you've been able to overcome your stutter, your struggle helps you build trust. I have a friend who's a speech pathologist who also started as a young lady here in Perth who decided to go and do speech pathology. And she says that when she treats children who stutter, they all say to her, "You're the best speech pathologist that mum's ever taken me to. You understand what I'm going through." Now, that doesn't mean that to be a good counsellor, a good practitioner, you have to have had the condition that you're coaching, training, or counselling in. But certainly in sharing your struggle in a communication setting helps you to connect and build rapport. Just going to pause for a moment. If there's any questions at this stage, any comments, just feel free to type away in the dialogue box. And I saw the walk the talk. Yeah, it can be hard at some times, especially if in your workplace you are asked to go out and talk on a policy or a particular strategy and you don't really think that's the right way. It's hard to walk the talk. You're just doing it because it's part of your job. And consequently, you may not have the impact that you want, and maybe someone else in your organization should be doing that. And later on I'm going to talk about you being authentic and genuine. So if your work requires you to go and speak, facilitate and train in an area that you're not quite aligned with and you feel you're not walking that same talk, maybe someone else should be doing that talk. Preparation. I just want to show you this iceberg, and we use this around public speaking and we use this around presentations. What they say is that 80% of your presentation, 80% of your connection, the audience doesn't see what you've done. It's about walking in their shoes. It's about pre-workshop questionnaires. It's about getting to the venue early. It's about knowing the values, the vision, the mission of the organization. And really, it is the tip of the iceberg that the audience sees. But this is where you've got to do your homework, and that helps you build that connection. I've got a question or a comment. So on TV this morning, and Ed Sheeran talking to a conference on stuttering and his journey as well. And so he shared his journey and something about the Eminem song. So the Eminem song must be about sharing your journey and learning from your journey. And that does give you great connection. So thanks for that comment. So how do you do some preparation? Know your audience. I use a saying, you need to walk 30 moons in your enemy's moccasins. This is a North American Native Indian saying. In other words, you need to walk in your audience's footsteps before you speak to them. What are their problems? What's their pain points? What's their experiences? Do you need to be culturally aware? What are their expectations? One of the biggest things where connections fall down is when the audience comes to a workshop expecting this and the presenter delivers this and there's a mismatch. Now, that's not the audience's fault. That is your fault for not understanding what the audience expected. So what can you do? Make sure that if you're speaking at a conference, the conference organizer, what is the theme of the conference? What would they like to see as an outcome, as a result of your presentation at the conference? So be clear on those audience expectations. In a workshop, I'll often do a pre-workshop questionnaire. What's your biggest issues around public speaking? What 2 or 3 tools would be most valuable to you if I could give them to you? Know their values and beliefs, and I mentioned the mission statement. Use their words, their language, their jargon. I use the disability language when I'm talking with people within the disability field. I also work with financial planners and superannuation consultants. I need to use different language. Let me talk a little bit more about just the language, the jargon. If you show that you understand your audience, that will help you connect. Making sure that you use the right language, the right stories that match the audience. And I mentioned that a very good speaker I know by the name of Glenn Capelli. Glenn Capelli is a West Australian. He's a school teacher by training, but he's on the World Corporate Speaking Gig, and he's now based in Melbourne, and he also has a radio program in Melbourne, Glenn Capelli. Glenn Capelli does a lot of work with the mining, the oil and gas, and the mining sector. He has never worked in mines. He's never worked in oil and gas. He's got no history whatsoever in that area. So how can he help build trust by using their language and speaking their jargon? Glenn Capelli grew up in Kalgoorlie, the biggest super pit in the world, the biggest hole in the ground. Glenn Capelli used to play down the mine shafts as a kid. So just that time and speaking about his experience in the gold mining town of Kalgoorlie helps him to bridge that gap and build a little bit of trust and connection with the mining engineers and the oil and gas type sector. His ability to use that language. I mentioned, are there any cultural awarenesses? One of the things that will help you connect is what we say, or we call a cultural compliment. And the business card exchange with anyone from Southeast Asia, China, Singapore, the two-handed. If someone hands you a business card with 2 hands, please don't reach out and grab it with 1 hand. In Myers in Perth, when I go shopping in Myers, more and more, probably 60% of the time, the young shop assistant hands me back my credit card with 2 hands, and I receive it with 2 hands. The Southeast Asian culture, we are part of Southeast Asia, has permeated Australian culture. So that's just knowing your audience. I travel around Australia speaking, and I make a point of view of finding out who the traditional landowners are. Of course, in Perth, it's the Noongar people, but there are different groups of Noongar people. In Perth CBD, they're the Wadjuk people. When I go out to Merredin, it's the Balladon people. When I go to and train in Bendigo, and I go there quite often, it's the Dja Dja Wurrung people. When I go to Geelong, it's the Wathaurong people. I'm going to Shepparton in a few weeks' time, and Tatura, and that's the Yorta Yorta people. When I go to Swan Hill, it's the Wamba Wamba people. The acknowledgement of that, and if you have some Aboriginal people in the room, one Aboriginal person, they really appreciate that cultural understanding and that compliment that you're paying. I was in Melbourne March last year at the International Comedy Festival, and this British comedian, his name was Mark Watson. I remember that because I've got a friend in Perth called Mark Watson. Mark Watson spent 15 minutes at the start of his 90-minute routine talking about AFL football, talking about the controversies, who was in the media, who was going to win the wooden spoon, and who was likely to win the final, who was going to be the top teams. This is March. So this Englishman spoke AFL football to a Melbourne crowd like he knew the football. He had taken the time to understand. And then when he got into his routine, his comedy routine, which was about identity theft, he already had us in the palm of his hands. That guy had taken so much time to learn and to understand the culture of a Melbourne crowd. And he just nailed it with his, 5 to 10 minute introduction about the state of AFL football. That's paying a cultural compliment. Some simple tools you can use. Use a conversational style. One of the things I tell people to do in public speaking is stop doing presentations, stop presenting, stop doing public speaking. Just have a conversation with the people in the room. One-on-one, all 400 of them, all 50 of them, all 1,000 of them, depending on the size. Have that conversation. Today, I'm just talking to you. There's no script. I have no idea where this is going to take me. I'm not sure which stories will come to my head. Mark Watson, in this instant, was the one that I used to talk about knowing your audience and paying them a cultural compliment. Use stories that they can relate to. I mentioned when I work with the disability sector, I tell different stories than when I'm working with the finance sector or the superannuation sector. My own struggle and my discrimination and being told that I could not get a promotion because of my poor communication skills, that gels well with people in the disability field. When I talk about my father who died without a will and me being the executor and having to unravel all of his estates, that works really well with the finance and the superannuation people. Be humble if you want to connect. Assume the audience knows more than you. In fact, I think the collective wisdom of any room that I'm in would always be greater than mine. So there's no stupid questions. Do not belittle anyone, even if it is something you've just covered and they still don't understand it. Use inclusive language. What I mean by that is, how are we going to make a difference? What are you going to do as a result of this, as opposed to, I did this, I'm good at that, I'm the hero. Make your audience the hero. When you do storytelling, one of the mistakes that people do, and when I tell my story about stuttering, it's not about me. I'm not the hero of my story. The audience is the hero, because it's the audience that's going to go out there with courage and with confidence and find their voice. It's you guys on this webinar that are going to change the world. You work in important areas. You're going to go back to your workplaces, work with your clients. You're going to change the world. So make sure it's inclusive and make the audience the hero. And your body language and your gestures. The latest newsletter is on closed body language, inclusive body language, and passive body language in terms of being a speaker or presenter. If you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, just go to my website on the homepage and you can click and subscribe. I'll send June's newsletter out to you. It's about how to have inclusive body language, not closed or aggressive body language, or not passive body language. There's some simple tools that will fast track your connection with your audience and put you in rapport. Be authentic and be genuine. Who you are on the platform needs to be who you are off the stage. Some people go on the platform, they amplify themselves, they do a performance, and then when I chat to them over the lunchtime break, or I speak to them, this is the presenter, not me. When I speak to the presenter after the presentation, I realize they become just a normal person and they lower their energy level. Now, I'm not saying that you don't need energy, but don't be fake on the stage and then be someone who you're not on stage when you're having morning tea or afternoon tea. Who you are with morning and afternoon tea needs to be who you are on the stage. So that means with your pimples, your warts, your idiosyncrasies, your bald head, which I've got, you just take that with you on stage and you just be the genuine, authentic you. People will pick a performance. Now, I'm not talking about theatre. If you are doing theatre, if you're in a play, then you're doing a performance. Public speaking and connecting is not about a performance. It's about genuine, authentic you. Need to have the right attitude. These guys in the photo are probably falling asleep. How do you have the right attitude? I've got a little acronym, communicate with care. The first one in terms of communicating with care is conviction. And I highlighted this a little bit early on. Do you believe in your message? Do you believe 100% in what you're saying? The first sale needs to be to you. If you don't buy your message, why would anyone else buy it? Have conviction. The next one is attitude. And that attitude needs to be that there's no place you would rather be than before this audience, than sharing your knowledge, than sharing your passage. It's the attitude of the 1%ers. What 1% can you do to make this a special experience for your audience? It's also called the attitude of the first date mentality. What do you do when you go out on the first date? You know, your new shoes, your hairdo and all that. I'm not saying do that as a presenter. What I'm saying is that is the attitude you need to have. Responsibility, you can change someone's life. You can transform one of your audience's lives. They might be struggling. They might be in despair. They might not know where to go for help. They may be stuck. And have the right energy. The rule for the energy level is match the audience. Don't come in too high. Don't come in too low. Match the audience level. And you need to be just a little bit more energized than the room. I've seen an early morning speaker, 7 a.m. People were tired, they were flat, and the person came on, jumped up and down and said, who's excited? Nobody was, and she lost them there and then. You can raise the energy as you go through the workshop, so you can have everybody jumping and clapping at the end, but don't come in at that level in Australia unless the room is already at that level. How do you know the energy level? You need to do your preparation. You need to work out who's in the room, what they're there for. Is it good news? Is it bad news? And match their energy level. So that's my little acronym, communicate with care. Any questions as I move on? Keep the connection going. Deliver what you promised. Remain behind. I'm always the last person to leave. I did a workshop in the Department of Fisheries on Monday, and one person had a lot of questions, and we finished at about 4, and I was still talking to him at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Follow up as you promised. If you send me any questions, I will respond. If you need a copy of my PowerPoint slides, I will respond. Ask for honest feedback. Feel free to email me. Those of you who've been to my workshops, and of course, Mimi, you've been to my workshops. I always get feedback at the end of the workshop. How did it go? What can I do differently? What can I change? And add value, free stuff. This webinar is free. Some of you have been on my workshops beforehand. This is a way of me adding further value to you being a client or a prospective client of mine. So don't think of you've been on, you've delivered, and that's the end. Why not keep the connection going? So when you go back the next time, or when they refer you to another client or another service provider, there's already that rapport and that connection in the introduction. Some rapport destroyers, acting like the expert or the guru. Please do not come across as the guru, even if you are the guru. That's about being a little bit humble. I mentioned about giving the wrong language or the wrong message and not meeting audience expectations. That's one of the biggest rapport busters. I've come along to learn how to do this, and you're teaching me this. I've been to a lot of these workshops where people promise stuff and they give you the what you need to do and the why you need to do it, but they don't give you the how. And the how happens to be a 3-day workshop that's going to cost $1,000. And I've walked away. I already know what I should do, and I already know why. I know I should be doing social media and I know why. I just don't know how to do it. And so I go to this workshop, spend a day, and I come out still not knowing how to do any of the social media I need to do. They've lost me straight away. Don't use too many acronyms. Don't tell bad jokes. Be careful with humor. And as I said, watch out for your inflated ego. Upcoming workshops, lots of workshops. Melbourne, Karratha, Bunbury, Perth. I'm not going to go through them. You know how to get to my events page on my website. Sign up for the newsletter if you don't have one already. You know how to contact me to give me feedback or if you have any further questions. And I'm going to pause for a moment. Oops, to see if there are any questions. I've done that really well. Are there any last questions? I've gone over slightly, 9:31. Any last questions? Any comments? So the thing is, what are you going to do for your next presentation to connect with your audience? What are you going to do? What extra steps? What extra preparation? Because it's your connection that's going to help you have impact. Really is worthwhile connecting with your audience. So thank you for your participation. Don't let this just be a nice workshop. What I want you to do is do something different. Grab one of the tools, one of the tips, one of the ideas I've spoken about, or something that has come into your own mind and use it. Use it tomorrow, use it next week, use it in your next presentation. Thanks, guys. Thanks for that comment. Glad you enjoyed it. And bye for now.